The film begins with Parker on a secret special forces mission. Parker and her team are disguised as international aid workers with the aim of capturing an arms smuggling gang. However, the criminals discover Parker and her team's true identities, leading to a chase where the criminals try to kill them. Two of Parker's teammates observe from a distance, and one of them uses a sniper rifle to kill the driver of one of the criminals' vehicles, causing it to overturn. The second vehicle continues to chase Parker and her teammate, firing a rocket at their car, which flips over, killing Parker's teammate. Parker survives and engages the criminals, successfully taking them down. Her remaining teammates join her, and they manage to capture the rest of the criminals. However, one of her teammates tries to kill the captured criminals with his gun, causing Parker to intervene, and a fierce fight breaks out between them. At that moment, their teammate Spider intervenes to calm the situation and reveals that he has hacked into their colleague's computer and discovered a complaint filed against Parker, seeking her removal from the unit. Parker receives a call from the police chief, Jess, who was her university colleague. Jess informs her that her father has died after the roof of his mine collapsed on him. Overcome with grief, Parker returns to her village immediately. Upon arrival, she goes to Jess to get details about the incident. Jess hands her a farewell letter found on her father's desk and expresses doubts that her father might have committed suicide. Parker confirms that the letter is not evidence of suicide, as she and her father had frequently exchanged letters. This way, Jess sympathizes with her and offers to drive her home, which she agrees to. During the drive, Parker tells Jess that she wants to sell her father's pub, which surprises Jess, especially since her father had built the pub specifically for her. Parker explains that she understands this, but cannot live in the village without her father. Upon reaching the house, Jess bids her farewell and tells her she can call him if she needs anything. Before entering the house, Parker goes to the pub and notices a car parked outside. A mysterious person gets out and enters the pub. Parker hides, and when the person approaches, attacks and knocks him down. The mysterious person turns out to be Mike, a friend of her father's, who tells Parker that her father was very proud of her. Parker bitterly smiles and talks about her father's death. Mike reveals that he was the one who found her father in the mine after the rocks had fallen on. They decide to go together to the mine to check the location where her father died. There, Mike tells Parker that her father had been spending most of his time recently in the mine. Parker recalls a special moment with her father in the mine where he gifted her an old dagger passed down from his grandfather. Parker snaps out of her memories when Mike tells her they have arrived at the site where her father was. Mike is puzzled because he doesn't know the cause of the rock collapse. Parker approaches the collapse site and notices strange marks on a rock. She tells Mike that the collapse might have been caused by a hand grenade explosion. Parker leaves the mine and returns with a hand grenade to test it at the same location. After the explosion, she observes that the rocks have the same marks as the grenade explosion. She confirms to Mike that her guess was correct and the collapse was caused by a hand grenade. Given that her father was a former Special Forces officer, it is impossible he made a mistake with the grenade. Parker starts to suspect that her father was murdered. Later, they return to the pub where Mike informs Parker that a criminal gang has carried out armed robberies in several places in the village and had previously attacked the pub with her father resisting them. This gang might be involved in her father's death. Parker, feeling enraged, goes to get something to drink. And at that moment, Alves, Jess's brother, arrives at the pub. Alves provokes Parker in an annoying manner, and it is revealed that Parker has disliked Alves for a long time because he always bothered her and tried to get close to her. When Alves tries to touch her, she grabs his finger and breaks it, warning him that if he tries to touch her again, she will kill him. Afterwards, Parker and Mike leave the pub, and Parker notices a suspicious car parked in front. She approaches and discovers it contains weapons. She gets into Mike's car and starts to monitor the vehicle with the weapons. Shortly after a group of people exits the pub, gets into the car and drives away. Parker asks Mike to follow them, stating she is sure the car is stolen and that she saw the weapons inside Parker. And Mike continues to follow the car until it stops somewhere. Parker asks Mike to wait in the car while she goes to investigate. She sneaks into the location and discovers that the gang members are threatening a large store owner. Parker attacks the gang members and fights them fiercely, managing to take them all down. Afterwards, she finds Frank's watch, her father's friend, on one of the gang members. She returns the watch to Frank, who tells her that the gang had attacked his house and stolen many things, including the watch. Frank thanks Parker for returning it and expresses his sorrow for her father's death. The next day, Parker starts repairing her father's car and plans to test it, but suddenly a large explosion occurs behind the mountain. Parker quickly heads over to investigate and discovers that Alves was testing rocket launcher. Parker realizes that the weapons Alves was using are military grade and not intended for civilians. That night, Parker returns home and searches through her father's belongings, finding a piece of paper with an email address. She calls Spider and asks him to investigate the email. Spider discovers that the email contains surveillance footage from the mine. Parker asks him to review the footage from the day her father died. After reviewing the footage, Spider tells her that a car was parked in front of the mine on that day. By describing the car, Parker identifies it as Alves' vehicle. Parker asks Spider to investigate Alves, and Spider returns to inform her that Alves is involved in arms trading. Parker realizes that Alves has a connection to her father's death. The next day, Parker decides to monitor Alves' movement and discovers that he is going to a military weapons storage facility. Meanwhile, Spider calls her to inform her that Alves is planning to finalize an arms deal at his house. Parker rushes to Alves' house, and on the way, she starts connecting the dots. She realizes that Alves' father, named Swan, is a senator, which means Alves is using his father's immunity to trade weapons. Upon arriving, she sees Alves with an arms dealer and observes large quantities of weapons being tested by Alves in front of the dealer. Later, Parker goes to meet Jess and encounters Swan, Jess's father, who has come to greet her. It becomes clear that Swan is uneasy about Parker's presence, but he still invites her to dinner at his house. That night, Parker and Jess reminisce about their university days. When Jess falls asleep, Parker takes the key to his office and heads to the police station. She enters Jess's office and searches through files until she finds her father's file. She takes the file and makes copies of everything in it. The next day, Parker attends her father's funeral, devastated and mournful throughout the day. That night, Parker goes to Swan's house for dinner with him and Jess. While they're talking, she receives a message from Spider, informing her that Alves is at the mine. Parker apologizes to Swan and Jess, telling them she has to leave due to an urgent matter, and quickly heads to the mine. At the mine, she sees two of Alves' men loading rocks onto a car. As soon as they enter the mine, Parker quickly punctures the car's tire with her dagger to disable it. She sneaks into the mine unnoticed and finds Alves sitting in her father's chair, which angers her. She attacks Alves and demands he confess to killing her father. At that moment, one of Alves' men throws a rock at Parker, but she dodges the attack, and the rock hits Alves instead. Parker then places the dagger at Alves' neck and demands that his assistant leave the mine. The assistant complies and runs away, but when Parker exits the mine, she discovers that Alves has vanished without a trace. Alves attempts to escape, but Parker tackles him and puts the dagger back at his neck. Alves pleads with her to calm down, swearing that he did not kill her father. Suddenly, Parker notices that Alves' men are setting fire to the pub. She rushes to the pub to stop them, but the flames engulf the entire place. Parker enters the pub quickly to retrieve her important belongings, and when one of Alves' men attacks her, she fights him off and throws him into the fire. Parker manages to escape from the pub before it burns down completely. Meanwhile, Alves and his men attempt to flee in the car, but they fail due to the punctured tire caused by Parker. Parker attacks Alves' men and knocks out the one who was with him. She then grabs Alves and continues to beat him, demanding that he admit to killing her father. Suddenly, Jess arrives and arrests Parker. The next day, Jess argues with Alves in front of his father Swan, telling him that Alves is the worst thing that has happened to him. It is revealed that Jess knows his brother is involved in arms trading, but cannot take action against him. Due to their father, Alves uses the proceeds from arms trading to fund his father's election. It becomes clear that Alves was at the mine because there were shells under the rocks, and he was trying to extract them to sell to his arms dealer. We also discover that Alves and his father are responsible for Parker's father's death, and Swan invited Parker to dinner to distract her from seeing Alves take the shells from the mine. At this moment, Swan yells at Alves and Jess, telling them that Parker has discovered dangerous information about them. He then tells Jess to find a way to get Parker out of the village. That night, Jess is at the police station appearing troubled and unsure of what to do. However, he goes to Parker in her cell and tells her that her father's property has found a buyer and offers her the money to leave. She refuses and accuses him of being involved with his father and brother in arms trading. Parker tells Jess that everything they've done is recorded on surveillance cameras, but he tells her that the cameras are not working. Parker smiles and tells him that her father had installed new cameras without anyone knowing, and that she will expose them and have them jailed. Jess gets angry at her words and leaves. The next day, Parker's lawyer visits her and then sits with Jess, asking him about his family. but Jess denies knowing anything due to being busy with work. The lawyer realizes he won't get any information from Jess, so he leaves and goes to the mine to search for evidence. At this time, Swan and Alves are at the police station, trying to force Parker to reveal the location of the camera recording. Jess arrives and stands by, dissatisfied with what is happening, but too afraid to speak up. Swan approaches Parker and offers her a deal. If she hands over the recordings, he will tell her what happened to her father. Parker tells him that the recordings are with a friend of hers. Jess takes his father away to talk to him and asks him not to tell Parker anything as it would be dangerous for them. Taking advantage of their distraction, Parker retrieves a pin from her hair and tries to free herself from her restraints. When Swan returns, he asks her for Spider's number to call him. Parker gives him the number, and when Spider answers, she tells him that she is with Swan's family and that they are beating her. Swan, enraged, tries to shoot her, but Jess stops him. At that moment, Parker manages to free herself, attacks Swan and Alves, and overpowers them. Parker then threatens Jess, demanding that he and his brother be put in the cell, or she will kill their father. Jess complies and locks himself and Alves in the cell. Parker locks them in and takes Swan out of the station, but encounters an officer who draws his weapon on her. Swan seizes the opportunity to escape from Parker. She attacks the officer, knocking him to the ground, then exits the station, gets into a car, and speeds away. However, Parker is exhausted and injured and loses consciousness while driving, leading to an accident. A farmer sees her and realizes what has happened. At the same time, Spider calls Parker to check on her, but the phone is with Jess. Jess sends a message to Spider pretending to be Parker, reassuring him and asking him not to come. Meanwhile, Alves and one of his men go to Mike's house, brandishing weapons and asking him where Parker is. Mike tells them he doesn't know. They search the house and find blood in front of the cellar door. But when they go down into the cellar, they find nothing. After Alves and his men leave, Mike opens a secret space in the cellar, revealing that Parker's asleep on a bed, and Mike's mother is treating her injuries. Shortly after, Parker wakes up and learns from them that Alves is searching for her. She tells them that Alves and his family are responsible for her father's death, and that they are smuggling weapons through her father's mine elsewhere. Jess and Alves bury the lawyer's body after Jess killed him in the mine. Jess tells his brother that he investigated the man who buys weapons from them and discovered he is a dangerous criminal. He advises Alves to stop dealing with him. However, Alves says that's not possible because he has already received part of the weapons deal payment and was supposed to deliver the weapons 2 days ago. The next day, Parker recovers her health and goes with Mike to Frank, a friend of her father, and retrieves a box full of weapons and explosives. That night, Swan meets with the criminal who buys the weapons from his son, Alves, named Just. Just is furious because Alves is late delivering the weapon and demands that Swan return the money he paid. Swan tells Just that they have a problem with transporting the weapons and asks for a 2-day extension. But Just gets angry, hits Swan, and when he asks about the money, Swan admits he spent it on his election campaign. Just then learns from Swan that Alves is at the mine, so he takes his men and goes there. Meanwhile, Parker goes to Swan's house and searches for him until she finds him sitting at his desk, bound to a chair. After making sure he can't do anything, she leaves the house and gets into the car with Mike, who was waiting outside. Parker tells Mike what she learned from Swan, saying that her father discovered they were smuggling weapons through the mine, and when he tried to stop them, Jess shot him and killed him. Before her father died, he detonated a bomb that caused the ceiling to collapse on him. Parker is determined to avenge her father. Eventually, they arrive at the mine, and Parker thanks Mike for what he has done for her. She asks Mike to promise that he will never enter the mine again, then says goodbye and takes the weapons into the mine. There, she sees the men transporting the weapon, but is shocked when she sees Spider arriving and asking about her. When Spider senses something is wrong, he tries to leave, but Just's men grab him and try to take him into the mine. At this moment, Parker enters and detonates the vehicle used to transport the weapon, giving Spider the chance to attack Just's men, but he can't hold them off and is captured. Parker then enters the mine and sees Just threatening Alves, believing Alves to be the one who blew up the weapons vehicle. But Alves swears he didn't do it, and Jess is with them but can't help his brother because Just's men are surrounding him. Just then takes them out of the mine and begins searching for the person who blew up the vehicle. After they leave, Parker quietly moves to where Spider is being held and sees Just's men beating him. She quickly attacks the men, fights them, and Spider helps in the battle. And together, they manage to defeat Just's men. As they are leaving, Just's men arrive and start shooting at them. Spider decides to blow up the place with the weapons inside. After the explosion, Just enters the mine and attacks Parker, but she quickly moves and manages to kill him. Shortly after, Alves arrives and attacks Parker, throwing her to the ground, and is about to kill her. But Parker pulls out the dagger and stabs him in the stomach, then holds him and stabs him in the neck until he dies. At that moment, Parker is surprised by the arrival of Mike and his mother, along with her father's friends Mo and Frank. She asks them about Spider and they start searching for him until they find him under the rubble. Parker breathes a sigh of relief when she discovers he is still alive. Mike's mother asks Parker to continue her mission and reassures her that she will stay with Spider and take care of him. Parker takes Mike and her father's friends and they go deeper into the mine until they find an opening leading to a military arms cache. Here, Parker realizes that Alves was stealing weapons from the military and selling them. Parker pretends to be injured, and when a soldier sees her, she tells him that someone shot her in the tunnel, so he goes to get a doctor. When the soldier leaves, Parker quickly moves and starts searching for Jess until she finds him. She attacks him and beats him severely, telling him she can't believe he killed her father. Jess admits that her father discovered their operation and tried to bribe him to stay quiet, but her father refused, which is why he killed him. Jess says he regrets what he did and suddenly pushes Parker away, grabbing a grenade and letting it explode on him. A month later, Parker and Spider are in a car, returning to their work. Mike calls Parker to choose paint colors for the bar, and we learn that Parker decided not to sell the bar, but to renovate it and make Mike its manager.